So, hello, I'm very grateful to have you today, dear Dr. Thomas Seger. Is it okay? Spelling Seger?
Yes,
Okay.
it's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you very much for your time. I would like to, could you please introduce yourself? Because I read about you something, but I prefer you to introduce yourself, what you do, and what is it Morosco company?
I'm a professor of sustainable engineering, civil engineering, really, at Arizona State University. I teach engineering business practices and systems, and so I have no formal medical training. My doctorate is in engineering, not in medicine or any of the related fields. So it's kind of surprising that I should start an ice bath company and then start learning about the medical implications, the health implications of the cold. But I got there because my work is in resilience, which is the response of infrastructure systems to disasters. I learned that it is not the concrete or the steel or the structure that makes our infrastructure resilient. It is the human creativity. It is the human ingenuity that either avoids the catastrophe or makes it worse. So I got very curious about how human beings respond to stress and what can we do to improve their stress response so that we can come out of the disasters better than we went in. Well, the cold is the classic psychological stress instrument. And so your whole physiological response when you get into the cold, it activates your fight or flight system. When you take control of your breathing and you structure it, you slow it down, you're also strengthening your vagal tone. You're taking control of your parasympathetic nervous system, which is an area of the nervous system that most people thought we can't really influence, but we can. We can calm ourselves down with our thoughts. And this...
But why cold? Because you have many stressors. So did you have
I agree.
personal stories story that you choose cold and you want to develop, or it was some other reason that you choose cold?
The idea behind why cold is because it is the discomfort that you can choose. You can deliberately immerse yourself in the bath, and then the way that you've trained your brain and your body is transferable to other stress events. You can remember how to calm yourself down and how to open up your perception when you are surprised by something else that's happening to you. But why it works, or really how it works, is a really interesting question. Most people fail to appreciate that our bodies are evolutionarily adapted to expect cold water immersion. It's counterintuitive because the oldest human fossils so far have been found in East Africa. And we think, well, East Africa is very warm, it's equatorial. If the earliest Homo sapiens, if they emerged in East Africa, how could we possibly, maybe some of the later, Northern Europe or something, or some of the other cold extremes, the Inuit, but how could Homo sapiens possibly be evolutionarily adapted to cold if we emerged near the equator? And the answer is in geography. Where does Wim Hof take his trainees? Up Mount Kilimanjaro, which is in East Africa. On the equator, there are 4 active glaciers today in East Africa near the equator. And during the Ice Age, those glaciers were much larger than they are now. The Homo sapiens, and it was just several thousand of them, during those Ice Age were packed into what's called a population bottleneck, in which they had to live in this land between the glacier and the ocean. Human beings, our ancient grandparents, they lived in and near the water. It is shellfish, it is waterfowl, it is the finfish, it is the food that comes out of the water that contains the DHA and the fatty acids that allowed Homo sapiens to build this enormous brain. It could not be done on the grasslands. It had to be done with the fish. And so our ancient ancestors were born to wade. They were born to forage, to fish, to dive in the water. We are aquatic creatures, and it explains several parts of our anatomy that are more like whales, dolphins, manatee than they are like chimps or gorillas or orangutans or bonobos or other apes.
Okay, but
Are not.
do you think that because all population, do you think that they live only because hunting in the water? What about hunting in the wood, for example?
Had to come later. It was not the woods or the
Okay,
grasslands
so it
that
was like
led to humankind.
they were near the water. You mean that it was the first, and after they spread?
Correct.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
After human beings, and where did they spread? Now, the glaciers recede, but they still follow the water. Human beings need water for a multitude of reasons, not just for drinking, but for food source. It's only after these population bottlenecks were resolved that Homo sapiens could flourish all over the world and become adapted to other geographies and other climates. At our origins, we are aquatic. And the water that our ancient grandparents emerged from, the water in the Garden of Eden, metaphorically speaking, it was cold because it was melting from the mountains. It was coming down from the glaciers of East Africa.
Okay, so if we close our eyes and we can imagine our ancestors that they live near water, because even if we close our eyes and we think about what was going on, for example, 200 years ago, so we can imagine that we didn't have so much warm clothes, yes, warm water in our houses, that we can have a really hot bath. So we don't have to find this idea even in our ancestors. We can find this idea even during the last 200 or even 100 years. But you
Correct.
talked about very, very long time ago. And that's why it is really interesting, because we think that we used to live like that. I mean, like today, 1 or 20 years ago, but it wasn't like that. That all our, metabolic process, they change a lot. Okay, but so please explain me, how did you start to use the coldness in your life? It was the idea of the company firstly you just started to, for example, just use the cold bath?
The company was a bit of an accident. I started doing cold showers. I'd read a book. It said, hey, cold showers are going to toughen you up. And I thought, well, I want to be tough. And so, I'm in there and I'm showering. I hate it. It makes me angry. I would be swearing and screaming.
But did you had some kind of health problem, or you just started, okay, I'm going to be more healthy, more fit, and I'm going to do just cold showers?
Correct. I used to be very fat. I weighed about 250 pounds, and you can translate that into kilograms, but I used to be obese.
Okay.
And then I lost a lot of weight. I got down to about 195, which for me was a good weight. And I wanted to know, what else can I do? It was not the ice baths that helped me lose weight. It was changing my diet. It was increasing my exercise. But I wanted to know, what else can I do? And cold showers was the suggestion. But I live in Phoenix, Arizona. It is the hottest city in North America, and the tap water warms up during the summer. So there's no such thing as a cold shower. Still, my former student, engineering student, Jason, he said, well, have you ever tried an ice bath? I didn't know what that was. He said, well, there's a bunch of people, we're getting together and we're going to buy some ice bags and we're going to do some breathing and stuff. It was all the Wim Hof method. Tried it. And as soon as I got up to my neck, I thought, this is fantastic. Cold showers make me angry, but ice baths calm me down. That's what I wanted to do. The only problem with ice baths in Phoenix, Arizona, is that you have to buy like 200 pounds of ice.
Yeah.
And then, it's 45 degrees C out in the backyard in the sun, and then it all melts in 15 minutes, and it's very frustrating and expensive. So
Okay.
Jason and I thought we ought to be able to make a machine that makes its own ice. We started taking apart freezers and
Like in our
refrigerators.
fridges.
Exactly right. And we built one, and it made ice. And this was fantastic. We had a party and we had people over, and they all enjoyed it. And then someone wanted to buy one. And we kind of had it in the back of our head. Wouldn't it be funny if we could sell these? But we weren't trying until someone wanted to buy it. And we thought, maybe we should put up a website. Maybe we should, take this a little more serious.
Mhm.
Well, so many people, unbeknownst to us, wanted an ice bath. Partly it was Wim Hof, but Scott Carney came out with his book about Wim Hof. Ben Greenfield was posting about it. Rick Rubin was already doing ice baths.
Mhm.
Jack Dorsey, who was CEO of Twitter at the time, he spent $75,000 to have a contractor come in and make a cold plunge in his home in San Francisco. So people were discovering the cold water, but there was no commercially available unit. We were the first ice bath in the world that makes ice. And we're still the only one in the Western Hemisphere. So I say the business was an accident, and there's a lot of truth to that. But my own story was when I got a health scare. This was maybe 5 years ago or 4. In any case, I'm 57. And so at this time, I was in kind of my early mid 50s. And I was becoming very fitness conscious. And I went to the lab and I wanted the male health panel for my blood work. You check all the boxes: cholesterol, testosterone. One of those boxes is prostate specific antigen. And I just give me the whole health panel. Came back and it told me some things. And one of the things was that my PSA, prostate specific antigen, was way too high.
Okay.
And I didn't know what that meant. I had to go online. I had to Google around. Elevated risk of cancer. I got very scared. I thought, I'm at an age where men are supposed to have prostate exams, and then they're supposed to get screened. And I thought, this is terrible. What if I have prostate cancer? Probably never did. Elevated PSA can be indicative of elevated risk, but it is not a definitive measure of cancer. It just means that your prostate is inflamed. Usually what a man would do is go to his doctor, have a prostate exam. And I didn't want to do that, because as soon as I did, then they'd say, well, it feels a little inflamed, but we should probably do a biopsy.
Yes.
And then the biopsy leads to a whole
story.
Right.
And
Right. And then you never get out of this, right? And so I said, I'm going to talk to other men first. And I talked to men who were older than me. I talked to men who were younger than me. And it seemed like they
already on ketogenic diet? Have you been?
I only fooled around with it a little bit.
Okay.
I knew what ketosis was because my son was 6 years old when he was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes. And he was in severe ketoacidosis when I carried him to the emergency room of the hospital. So I had been learning about ketones, ketosis, the ketogenic diet, the Atkins diet, and metabolism. At this point, I probably had 10 or 15 years of accumulating knowledge of metabolism, insulin, and ketosis, but I didn't know anything about prostates. And the stories that the men told me made it a lot worse. They frightened me away from traditional allopathic medicine to the point where I knew I was never going to let a doctor touch my prostate. I reasoned, in my catastrophic imagination, that it would be better for me to die a long, slow death of prostate cancer than to go through the medical procedures and live without a prostate. But I didn't want to just do nothing. So I said, I'm gonna do more keto and more ice baths, because I'm gonna try and handle this inflammation with diet and cold exposure, and we'll see what happens to my PSA.
Mm-hmm.
So I started doing ice baths every day. And then I would come out and I was cold and I have to rewarm myself with jumping jacks or push-ups. And then I would walk to campus, teach my classes.
Mm-hmm.
And then I got another, blood work panel. My prostate came way down to less than 1 nanogram per milliliter.
Did you check your ketones as well? On
No,
those?
I have a pee strip, a urine strip. You pee on it, and it tells you whether you're in or out. And I would cycle in and out of ketosis, maybe do 3 or 4 days in ketosis, and then eat some carbs and come out. The ice bath is the fastest way to stimulate production of endogenous ketones. I'm always on the edge of ketosis. I almost always have traced ketones in my urine. And if I want to flip into ketosis, I do an ice bath, I go low carb for a day, and I'll be right back into like a ketogenic state.
Okay, so what kind of diet do you have now? I mean, mostly what do you eat?
I'm mostly low carb. I eat a lot of eggs. Like,
Okay.
I don't know, maybe Dr. Baker should say I should add more steaks or something like that. And, maybe he's right, but I eat a lot of eggs. I eat a lot of salmon, which I can get frozen. I can get fresh. I've tried to move towards fish and waterfowl. That is, I prefer duck to chicken, just as an example. I eat a lot less pork. The pork in the United States, it's very low quality. Unless I know the farm and I know the source, I avoid the pork. I eat less chicken than I used to, but I still eat some. So I'm not strict carnivore and I'm not strict keto, but I will go low carb and I avoid seed oils.
Animals products.
Say again?
Mostly based on animals products.
Correct.
Okay. Okay, so I would like to ask, because my audience, they are very interested in the topic of cold and how we can improve our health, because, I don't know if the same situation is in the United States, but I can imagine that it is. Everybody wants to, okay, do you have some research on it? Please show me the research. Please show me. And I'm always laughing about that, because do you know the same, that nobody is going to earn a lot of money about ketosis, about, I don't know, carnivore diet, about something which is not very expensive, but it's going to be very effective in our health care. So
but it doesn't make anybody money.
Yeah, of course. Or maybe because they sometimes they say to me, okay, Justina, but you are going to earn. Am I really? How much? No, we can see what is going on in the shops, in the pharmacy business, because it's a big business, billiards dollars business. It's chemotherapy. Yes, so we know that. So could you please tell me, because I actually found the story. I don't know if it's your friends or your clients, I don't know, but I passed through your Instagram account, and it was a guy who had a wife, and he died. It was a cancer, yeah. And during the next month or 2 months, he also got the diagnosis that he had a cancer, and he decided that, because they had a small daughter, and he decided that he had to do something for her, because he doesn't want to leave her just by herself. So, and he started to use coldness as a therapy. Could you please tell us how it was?
Let's speak to the question about research. There is a ton of research. I'm almost done with this book. I have 100,000 words. I need about 30,000 more. The cancer chapter I just finished drafting, that has over 300 citations. The science is pretty solid, but I find that the people asking for research are not convinced by research, because the data, it applies to some statistical ensemble of a bunch of subjects. And, we can calculate our p-values and our confidence intervals. Nothing matters but what happens to you. You are one person. And so your experience, do you belong to this 99% or do you belong to the 1%? All of those studies are really just hypotheses for you to try on yourself. And so I've worked into my book stories of human experience. And the one that you're reading is about Dean Hall. Here I am talking to men scared of my elevated PSA. Dean found us on the internet. And Dean told us this remarkable story of how he was diagnosed with chronic lymphomatic leukemia, CLL. I think I'm remembering the acronym correctly. His doctor said, you might not have long to live, or it might act slow, but this is going to kill you. It is incurable and untreatable. And Dean got very depressed until, as you pointed out, he thought he has to do something. He has to do something to inspire his daughter, to inspire other cancer patients. He found a will to live, and he decided that the thing he was going to do was swim the entire length of the Willamette River in Oregon. It is 180 something miles long. Convert that to kilometers for your audience. It took him almost 3 weeks to swim it going downstream. And if you don't know Oregon, the Willamette is very cold. He wrote a book about it called The Wild Cure, and it's clear that he experienced hypothermia multiple times. He was wearing a wetsuit and he was swimming, but we could call it therapeutic hypothermia in his case. But his doctor came out to visit him in the second week and measured his body fat. He was down to 3%, which some people would consider dangerously low. His doctor convinced him to take a break for 2 days, just take the weekend off. And he did. And this allowed his mitochondria and his metabolism to sort of come out of that acute stress state, restore. He swam the rest of the river. Well, that was quite an achievement, and everybody was proud of him, but his parents, and he's not a boy, I mean, he's a grown man, but his parents were very concerned. They said, you must get your leukemia checked out. You've stopped doing your blood work, and we love that you're inspired and that you feel great, but you must get your blood work updated. So he did. He flew down to San Diego, and he had the specialist that diagnosed him do the blood work again. And the specialist came out with the new results. And he said, Dean, I don't know what to tell you. And Dean felt terrible because he's heard the doctors say that before. His whole face crestfallen and depressed. He thought that he must have made a mistake and made his cancer worse. He said, what do you mean, doc? And the doctor said, there is no trace of leukemia in your body. If I had not done your diagnosis myself, I'd swear it must have been a false diagnosis. His leukemia was gone. And this is his experience. So he's telling me this story, and I'm very hopeful. It's very encouraging and inspiring. But at the time, I thought, no, that's just one miracle. That's not translatable to, and I don't want to contradict him, but it sounds ridiculous to me. And then I read a book called Tripping Over the Truth by a journalist named Travis Christofferson. He's the one who introduced me to Thomas Seyfried's work. Thomas Seyfried is a faculty member at, I believe, Boston University. The Warburg effect and the metabolic theories of cancer. Well, I'll be damned if cold exposure doesn't starve tumor cells of the glucose that they need to proliferate. When you get cold, your brown fat will clear glucose out of your bloodstream, preferentially, because the glucose partitions into the brown fat before it gets to the tumor cells, and the tumor cells starve. That research came out of Sweden in 2022. They did a beautiful study, Seager et al., and a series of elegant experiments showing that mice and human beings in cold environment will starve the tumor cells. It extends the life of the mice in which they had implanted tumors, and the tumors grow more slowly. Wonderful research. But Seyfried's work, hang on, Seyfried's work is about ketones. When he takes ketones and adds them to animal models, exogenous ketones. He feeds the ketones to the animals. It also suppresses tumor growth. So these two things, the ketones and the cold exposure combined, could very well have resolved Dean's leukemia. There's a scientific basis behind his experience, is what I'm trying to say.
So we can say that, for example, if we are, because if we get our energy from glucose, so we are not in ketosis, we take our energy from glucose. Yeah. So if we switch the metabolites to take energy from fat, so we are going to be in ketosis. So you think that if you are in a hyperthermia, tak? Yes. So you are in a cold, so you also increase your ketones and you switch your metabolism to ketosis.
Well, I'm going to caution you about the switch. When you get into the cold water, your liver will typically release glycogen because it activates your fight or flight response. And you're ready to go. Your body knows that your muscles will need energy. And we've measured this with continuous glucose monitoring data. You take a healthy person and you put them in the ice bath, their liver will release glycogen into the bloodstream. And we watch their blood glucose spike up to about 140. You think, well, that's no good, but it comes right back down. It is exactly what the body is supposed to be doing. Flood the bloodstream with
bloodstream at the beginning. If you are going to the coldness and you check your blood level, you are going to be high blood level because of
for a minute. And then the glucose is cleared from the bloodstream by the brown fat or by the muscles if they start shivering. The very first thing that fuels thermogenesis is the glucose. But you know that the glucose stores within our body are very limited. The liver can only give you a little bit of a temporary spike. So the other thing that happens when you get into the cold is, again, your nervous system actuates white fat cells to release lipids, to release free fatty acids into the bloodstream so that the brown fat, after they've used the glucose, can then switch to fat. Both glucose metabolism and fat metabolism go into overdrive right away. As the glucose clears, and this only takes a few minutes, and the brown fat begins burning the free fatty acids that came out of your white fat cells, of course, you are also producing ketones. You haven't switched your whole metabolism over to ketosis, but the ketone levels in your bloodstream will go up. If your liver does not have adequate stores of glycogen because you've been borderline ketosis, you just haven't stored up a lot of carbs, an ice bath can be enough to switch you into ketosis if you're close, if you're already low carb. It can also be a way to burn up carbs that, Thanksgiving in America is a time for feasting. And I love feasting. I particularly love pumpkin pie. And I ate a whole half a pie. And then I thought, what am I going to do? I got into my ice bath. I peed on a stick to measure my ketone levels, very low, ate the pie, got into the ice bath. And then 4 hours later, again, and the ice bath was enough to clear all that additional glucose from the sugar in the pie right out of my bloodstream, and I was producing ketones. So it is the fastest way, cold exposure, to stimulate endogenous ketone production, but you will not stay in ketosis if you're also eating a lot of carbs.
Yeah, of course. But I was wondering because, okay, so let me ask about how to start, because I know that I would like to have your bath directly into Poland, but we are going to talk about it later. But
we ship to Poland. We have one in the Netherlands. We have several in Germany. We reach Poland.
Yeah. So I have to sell it on my website.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. But anyway, I would like to ask if I have, because in my cases, I mean, my patients, they are mostly very sick with Parkinson, Alzheimer. I have a lot of patients with autism, insulin resistance, but also MS or Lyme disease, chronic Lyme. Yes, and I would like to ask if you think that is it a good idea in this kind of not very easy problems to start very deep? I mean, start with cold showers or not? We don't have time. We have to start with because sometimes I'm, I remember my own story, and I start because I couldn't accept any coldness, I couldn't. I barely could go out without my head, and I started very, very slowly with cold, even not cold bath, only cold shower, only on my feet, just on my feet, after the on my knees, and up and up and upper, and after maybe 1 year, because I couldn't walk even. So after 1 year, I started to go into the lake during the winter. But I had ablation because I had when I was 24, I had ablation because I had a lot of a very high heart palpitation, and very low of my oh my god, how to say, pressure, sorry. And I started to feel very bad in this lake, I started to feel that I'm going to fall down, so that's why I'm asking you if it's good idea to start deep, or we should start to accept more coldness at the beginning, and after that increase it, and after that use the cold bath.
I can speak to three conditions: multiple sclerosis, Alzheimer's, and Parkinson's. I can't speak so much to chronic Lyme because I haven't researched it and I don't know anybody, but I do know people with multiple sclerosis and Parkinson's, and I've done a lot of research on Alzheimer's. So let's talk about multiple sclerosis. I have two customers, and they use cold therapy in the Morozko to manage their multiple sclerosis. I knew nothing about this until they found me and said, the cold is really good for me. So I went to the library to research it. And sure enough, the first papers on cold water immersion for multiple sclerosis were published in the 1950s. These physical therapists, they had something like 13 patients, and 12 of them improved considerably using regular cold water immersion. So I asked my customers about it, and they said that they were in their Morozko 2 or 3 times a day during the summer. They're both now, one of them was a former Navy SEAL. So this is a special forces soldier, and he was reduced to a wheelchair by his multiple sclerosis. He's now running 5Ks again. So he's become an athlete, and he can take care of his children. And he does this with cold therapy. He can't wait to taper off his meds. He's being very conservative about it. But there are something like 17 US FDA approved medications for multiple sclerosis, and none of them work as well as cold water immersion.
I know.
When you've seen this. However, there is a difference between partial body and whole body. Partial body, there's a study that came out of Finland on this. Partial body, we typically call cold stimulation, and it will increase the heart rate. Just like when I was taking cold showers and they made me angry, I wound up in a fight or flight state and I never hit the calm. However, whole body reduces the heart rate. You get an initial boost and then everything comes down. And we've done some pretty good small studies, but with continuous heart rate monitors that show heart rate goes up as you're getting in, and then as you emerge and structure your breathing, it goes down below it where you started when you were warm and dry. The second one, the whole body, is important because it activates what's called the dive reflex. The gasp reflex is what happens when you just put your feet or your hands in. But the dive reflex,
very calm, and you should start to breathe through your nose to come down.
Correct.
Because
Correct.
when I started to do this, and I didn't know that I shouldn't do like this because it's not working. So if I'm come down and if I use the cold shower, and I use also the Buteyko method, so it's a reduction of my breathing, it's got my hypoxia in the cell is I'm not going to take a lot of oxide, you know, because I'm not going to hyperventilation myself. So
do not hyperventilate and do cold water immersion. It's very dangerous.
Yes, it's very dangerous. And I know that it was my mistake when I put myself into the lake, because I was, you know, I was like, okay, I'm going into the lake, and I put myself, I was alone, you know, and I was doing like with my mouth open, and I started to have palpitation, and you know, I barely seeing nothing, and I know that it was my mistake because of the breathing pattern. But when I started to use Buteyko method and reduction, and my level of acceptation of carbon dioxide was higher and higher, I can calm down myself. And even during the, you know, just ordinary shower, because I take showers only cold shower, even on my head, so I can calm down myself. It's not, for me, it's very good way to use cold therapy. I know that it's not nice, you know, because it's a different level of temperature, but it's also very good for me when I take the shower in the morning very early, for example 6 a.m. or 5:30 a.m. It was very cold for me. After that, I can go for horse riding. So, and I also use the Buteyko method. So for me, it's working very, very good. So that's why I was asking you about this kind of patient, because not every time that they can afford the, you know, the ice bath.
I'd recommend, when you're starting with your patients like MS, Alzheimer's, and Parkinson's, start them whole body, but at a higher temperature. So it might be 20 degrees C, even 25 degrees C. Because if they're like you and they're starting out and they're not tolerant to cold, somewhere between 20 and 25 degrees C will still give them the gasp reflex. It will still activate their nervous system. When you go whole body, the body changes the circulation. When you go partial, so it's, you know, maybe it's on your back or wherever your shower is, of course, all the blood moves to the areas that are not cold. And so in the shower, your blood is moving around to avoid the shower stream. But when you go into the bath up to your neck, the blood accumulates in the core and in your head, because your head is above the water. And the additional blood circulation in your head is good for your brain. The types of patients that you have, Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, MS, they all are characteristically disordered in their nervous system, and sometimes, like Alzheimer's, right in the brain. The whole body is going to be healthy for their brain. Parkinson's in particular is about a flaw in the dopamine receptors. And cold water immersion, this was a study coming out of Poland, cold water immersion will increase your dopamine levels 2 or 3 times.
Because one of my patients, she has a diagnosis of Parkinson, but I think that it wasn't Parkinson, actually. It was the chronic Lyme disease and co-infection, and that's why it was a lot of neurological problems. But anyway, she got the diagnosis because doctors you know,
Yeah.
as always. And I have to say that it was the worst thing that she got a lot of levodopa. It's
Oh,
you
yeah.
know, and you know, I know I'm not a doctor, as you know, and I'm not able to take off this medication.
No, right.
I can't, and I don't want to, even because I'm not responsible for it. But it's so hard to reintroduce all good. I mean, she's in a healthy state of ketosis because she has a GKA on about 1, so it's
Mhm.
therapeutical ketosis. But whole process with this levodopa, a lot of medication, it's really hard. So and I was also researching about dopamine and Parkinson, and I know that you can make the level of dopamine higher if you use coldness.
You got it. I have a customer who uses his Morozco to manage his Parkinson's. He was very afraid of this because the shivering is difficult to distinguish from his tremoring. And so when he began to shiver in the cold, he got very anxious. Was this a Parkinson's, response? And after he got used to it, he realized that his cramping, his trembling, his gait, that all of these symptoms of Parkinson's would alleviate for hours after he did 4-5 minutes of cold exposure. He liked that part. He started at about 22 degrees C, and he has worked his way all the way down to 4 degrees C now. It is a very cold bath, and he does 5 or 6 minutes. He's quite happy with the results.
And results are very interested for him. I mean, how he's because this lady, she has to be at home all the time, you know. He's not
He
able.
travels. He's in Greece right now. He lives in Arizona. He travels to Europe. He flies. He's a pilot. He flies all over the United States. He and his wife attend these conferences and go on vacations. He's quite active, and he's happy with the results of his cold exposure regimen because he doesn't want to take L-Dopa. He wants to do everything he can to avoid that.
He didn't start even, did he?
Say again?
He didn't start even levodopa, or did he start?
No,
Okay.
he wanted to do everything he could to avoid it because he knew that L-Dopa, I mean, in layman's terms, would burn out the dopamine receptors in his brain. He didn't want that. He's like, I have to try everything. And he feels, this is not a medical opinion, but he feels like when his body is producing its own dopamine instead of getting it exogenously, that his body as a system responds much better without the risk of burning out his dopamine receptors even further. So he's quite pleased, but we don't have enough data on cold exposure and Parkinson's to say, this is going to work. All we can do is recommend to Parkinson's patients that they try it and see if it works for them.
Okay. So last question, just to, because, people get diagnosis, insulin resistance, cancer, hormonal problems, thyroid problems, and so on and so on. So could you please tell us, because you're in this topic for many years, so you know a lot of people who are treating themselves using cold therapy. So could you tell us some kind of stories about this kind of, because we know both that every disease is curable. We know that. So we just have to find a way to do this using ketosis or low carb, GAPS diet, or any other combining, changing metabolism, changing our breathing patterns, cold. So please encourage people to use coldness as a therapy.
I can tell you what happened to me. I got my blood work back after doing the ketosis and the ice baths and the exercise. My PSA came way down to less than 1. I was overjoyed, but my lab had a different result as flagged, saying, uh-oh, too high. It was my total testosterone. So here I was, 50 something years old, and my testosterone levels had jumped up as a result of my ice bath and exercise regimen. I had the testosterone of like an oversexed 19-year-old. It was extraordinary. My urologist sent me back for more testing. He wanted to know what my luteinizing hormone was, because it is luteinizing hormone that signals the gonads to produce testosterone. And if my luteinizing was low, but my total T was high, then my urologist would have said, you're using you're juicing, you're on steroids, and he didn't trust me. And he'd never heard of ice baths. And so I went and I got it tested. Sure enough, my luteinizing hormone was off the charts. So not only did I not have cancer, and I no longer had an inflamed prostate, but I had this immense testosterone level, all of this energy. And of course, that helps with mental health and body composition. So for me, the ice bath and exercise protocol, I've been doing it ever since. But it's the opposite of the way most people think about it. They think that you're supposed to use the ice bath to recover from the exercise. And I say, don't do that. Use exercise to recover from your ice bath.
Okay.
And Joe Rogan read one of my articles out on his podcast. And since then, the article became much more popular, and I started receiving messages from all over the world. Men saying, I saw your article, I'm trying your protocol, look at my labs. I have a dozen men, some of them older than me, some of them younger than me. Some of them have doubled and tripled their total testosterone doing this ice bath and exercise protocol. And it doesn't take a lot of exercise. Sometimes just 20 minutes of a brisk walk is enough, but some push-ups, some pull-ups, some jumping jacks, jumping rope. So the opposite of what we've learned in sports is probably better for our general well-being if we're not suffering from some chronic disease. That was my story. But then I have a friend, she's a mom, she's got 4 kids. And I remember this very well. 3.5 years ago, she was rushed to the emergency room in the hospital. She had acute abdominal pain. And she thought, maybe this is an ovarian cyst or something. She experienced this before, but it was worse than anything she'd ever felt. She didn't know what was going on with her. They kept her overnight, and they met with her in the morning, lots of scans and blood work. And they said, you have a tumor on your liver. It's very frightening. They said, we cannot biopsy it because the liver is made of nothing but blood vessels. And she has a clotting disorder that makes her prone to bleeding out. They said the risk of the biopsy is too great. We cannot remove it surgically. We cannot treat it with radiation. And chemotherapy is not likely to touch it. She said, well, what can you do? He said, well, we brought it up to the hospital board, the tumor board, and they met and looked at your case, and they decided the best thing for you would be watchful waiting. Watchful waiting? It sounds like if tumors come out of nowhere, and now you're just going to watch it, which means she was afraid she was going to die. Tom, what am I going to do? She said, and who's going to take care of my daughters? I said, this is what you're going to do. You're going to cut out all of the soda, all of the fruit juice, all of the bread, all of the concentrated carbohydrates. You are going into therapeutic ketosis, and you're going to start doing ice baths. She said, okay.
Okay. Super.
3 months go by. She gets another scan because that's what the watchful waiting is supposed to be. And the tumor has shrunk.
Oh my God. I have
goosebumps, right? Because spontaneous tumors, the one thing that we know is they don't shrink all by themselves, right? Like you never see
by
it, right?
Yeah.
She's fine. She knows she has a tumor. There was one time she experienced the abdominal pain again. And, it was because we went out to get ice cream. That was some really good ice cream. And she got the top. I mean, she went off the diet. She relaxed on the, because we do this, we kind of have to test. And since then, she had never experienced a relapse, at least not to my knowledge. And she lives in therapeutic ketosis now for the rest of her life.
Yeah.
So as she's made this commitment. So this is now 2 people, Dean Hall, who cured his leukemia just by going cold water swimming. And the other woman, her name is AJK Ryder. You can find her on social media, who shrunk her tumor using ketosis and cold baths. That is not a promise to anyone. That doesn't say, right? However, there are some good studies that look at ketosis in combination with traditional therapies like chemotherapy. And the people on the ketogenic diet have better outcomes, longer lifetimes, and fewer chemo side effects when they're in ketosis. Because ketosis is a way of strengthening the body, fortifying the healthy cells in the body against the toxic action of the chemotherapy.
Yeah. Okay. So please tell me, because you mentioned about your book. So I understand that your book is going to be ready in some.
It will take me months.
Yeah,
Yes.
I know. It's a huge story. I know. But if you are going to finish it, I'm going to translate it into Polish.
Oh, that would be wonderful. Yes. We'll have a Polish edition.
Would be pleasure for me. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm going to. So thank you very much for your time. I'm going to translate the interview. I will stop it now. Okay. I hope so. Oh yeah, it's going to blah blah coś tam. It was a pleasure, for me to have you. You have a lot of knowledge, a lot of this kind of good energy.
Thank you, Justina.
It was. I would like to have your. If you don't have anyone who can sell this in Poland, I can do this. So
terrific.
Because I have on my website, my own ebooks about carnivore diet, mostly writing. I'm also during my own book about my story, so Lyme story, because it's a lot of people who are suffering on Lyme disease, and I have many healthy products, and actually I was looking for something like that, but I didn't think about United States, because it's very far. But if you have any possibility to send me the price list, because I can do this, that somebody order, because I'm not going to sell it like a books, because it's not a book. But if somebody have money and wants to buy this kind of thing, because I don't know the prices and so on, so you can send me on my email address.
Yep.
And I'm going to put it on my website. I'm going to promote it, because I think that it's worth it. I would like to buy it for myself as well. So it's possible to put into your house, or you have to have a garden?
Yes. It works very well inside. It is built for outdoor use as well. You can do that. And it's a lot easier inside.
Okay. So that's the one thing. So you can send me the price list and how to organize, the delivery, because I think you deliver it into Germany, yes?
We can go straight to Poland.
Okay, because Germany, Poland, it's almost so it's not going to be much more expensive than into the Germany.
Agreed.
Okay, so what else? Thank you very much. Okay. I wanted to ask about your son. Did you manage diabetes?
Yeah.
Because my
Um,
daughter, she had the
he's
same.
married now. He's got 2 kids.
Ah,
It felt for a long time like I was responsible for his life. I mean, this is just, I think it happens to a lot of parents who have children with like a chronic condition. But I'm not responsible anymore. He's grown up. He has a wife. He knows how to take care of himself, and there's no reason to think that he is at increased risk of mortality or a disease because the technology has gotten so much better than when he was diagnosed.
okay, because my daughter, she's 9. I have 2 kids, and my son is 21 and my daughter is 9. And she also had a lot of problems with sugar level. Her sugar level was very, very little, 27.
Wow.
Yeah, and but she's mostly, maybe not carnivore, but she mostly eat meat and fat, some carbs, but just a little bit of fruits, but a lot of butter. And we stopped that, so she didn't take any medications.
Outstanding.
Yeah. So, and she also, when she was very little, she got into the lake during
Oh, that's great. Kids love cold water and
yes.
they're equipped for it. They have so much more brown fat than grown-ups do. They're fine.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Okay, so I'm not going to take your time. I
Okay.
hope you can come to Poland. I invite you. We can do something in Poland. So if you want to
In what
come,
city are you?
I'm now in Opole, so it's a small city near Wrocław, but I used to
Okay.
live 17 years in Warsaw. So I know this place. So we can do some conference together.
Yep.
I will think about it, and we can do, because I have a lot of friends also who are doing carnivore. They are the dietitians, so we can do something.
Terrific. It would be a blast.
Been in Poland?
Mm-hmm.
Really?
I've been to Warsaw once. It was a layover on my way to Kyiv. And
Ah,
so I didn't see much of the city. I got a good look at the hotel bar.
ah.
Right.
Yeah, I can imagine. Nothing else than hotel bar. Okay, so we have to plan it and you have to visit.
That sounds great. Thank you.
But have a great day, because I have evening in my place and you have it all day.
Have a good night, Justina. We'll
Thank
talk to
you.
you soon.
Bye
Bye-bye.
bye.